For more resources, visit rymonline.org.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
All right, we're back with Kurt Cooper. We've got a podcast this week talking about podcasts and podcasting. And so we looked at the first day explaining what a podcast is. Secondly, why do you listen to podcasts? Now, today's question is, which podcasts do you listen to? So, Kurt, what are some of the podcasts you listen to? And I'll share some of mine as well and briefly explain them.
Last time we talked about all the pastors that you can listen to. So I'm going to forego all of those here. I'm going to forego all the different. I mean, if there is a pastor that's been important in your life and ministered to you, and they're a senior pastor or they preach regularly somewhere, more than likely they have a podcast. So I'm just going to forgo all the pastors that I listen to right now and just understand that there's a lot of them. So that category out of the way, what else could you listen to? Let's talk about things that are very popular that people are talking about in the culture. Mm-hmm. First of all, This American Life is a really strong podcast. It's made by NPR. That's going to ring some bells for some people one way or another. And I'm not going to comment one way or another on their political leanings or anything like that. I am going to say that they do a really good job of producing these podcasts.
Absolutely, very professional.
Yeah, they're very, very good, and they have some spin-off or some branches of podcast. Serial, not like what you eat for breakfast, but SERIAL. They have 2 seasons of that that were immensely popular, and that's an ongoing series. In fact, my wife and my wife's sister and I all listened to that at the same time, and we just had some really good discussions about Serial and what we enjoyed about it, and it was like watching the same television show. So, or watching, you sit and talk about, if you like Parks and Rec, or if you watch The Blacklist, or I don't want to name check all NBC shows, but even though they are secretly my sponsor, let's go Peacock. Anyway, we can edit all that out. John, something's going on over here, but but all that to say is that we sat around and talked about Serial season 1 quite a bit, and they have a new podcast called S-Town. It's about a small Alabama town, so that obviously piqued my interest. I guess this is the time.
Give a disclaimer.
Yeah, this is the disclaimer where I say that the podcasts that I'm talking about are not for youth. There's a lot of they cover adult themes like murder or deserting the army or suicide and homosexuality, and all kinds of things are discussed in these.
Even the title, S-Town, stands for something.
Yeah, it does. So I'll let you figure that out. But these are, and I'm not, saying, hey, these are the best things, but they're interesting things, or things that people are talking about in the culture.
And let me even jump onto that and just say, I think when S-Town came out, in the first month, it had like 20 million downloads. Mm-hmm. I mean, something significant like that. And so that is something important for us to be aware of. If much of the culture is tapping into something and listening to something, okay, what is it about that message that's intriguing to them and appealing to them? And so I think it is important for us to at least be aware of that, but again, not forcing anyone's conscience on anything listening to that.
Or just openly endorsing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good. I'll give you another one that I'm not going to openly endorse, but I think is a really fun podcast. It's a podcast called Men in Blazers. Yeah. They cover the English Premier League, or they cover, what Americans call soccer and what they call football. They're 2 English guys who live in America. And they are amazing. And even there are congressmen and senators who listen to them. And, I think they mentioned the other day that a congressman from Tennessee said that that listening to Men in Blazers was like watching professional badminton. I'm not really sure what's going on. I just know that I'm entertained by it. And those guys are fun. They're really fun to listen to. Even if you don't like soccer, they're very fun. Again, I'm not endorsing everything they say. They might, their subjects, they might go ranging over all kinds of subjects. But
and let me jump in here too. Yeah. And this might should have fit in on another day, but something else about podcasts, and I'm going to tie this into Men in Blazers, is you can listen to it at a 1.5 speed.
Yeah.
And so that helps you squeeze something into your day a little bit more. You know, you can crank the podcast up; it goes a little bit faster. But I have found with Men in Blazers, since they have an accent, and if you speed it up, you're not going to be able to keep up. Really, so you probably want to keep that on regular speed.
Yes, they both have British accents, and they speak very quickly, and they make a lot of references to English things that are uniquely British things that you might not pick up on. A podcast. My wife loves true crime podcasts, and a podcast that I really out of the Gimble net. I guess it's Gimble or Gimlet. I'm sorry, the Gimlet Network. A podcast that I listen to them is called Crime Town. If you are into The Godfather or or Goodfellas, or if you ever watched The Wire or any kind of shows that had to do with crime in any way, like organized crime, you can think about all the different. I think America's always kind of had it. Sopranos is another one, but America's always kind of had a love obsession with. And this is a look at organized crime in a place that I never knew that it abounded, which was in Providence, Rhode Island, and it covers a lot of ground there. It's very, very entertaining, and not only is it entertaining, but it is very, very eye-opening.
So was this a one-time thing, or is this an ongoing series?
It was an ongoing. It has seasons. I think there were like 17 episodes, and some of them were really short, 20 minutes, and some of them were really long, like over an hour. Okay. But it covers a ton of the history of Providence by two guys who are from Providence, and they take a yielding look at the good side of the town and the bad side of the town, and how organized crime helped the town, and also how it almost killed the town, and all those kind of things. And another podcast that I really like is Side Hustle School. This is an informative podcast where this guy, he just interviews people about their side hustle, and a side hustle is a job outside of your regular job, your 9 to 5 that you do.
Is it a shady job? Side hustle?
No, it's not a shady job. I'll give you some examples. Okay. He mentions a lady who wanted to get candy hearts with her husband's name, and she found out that the company that makes candy hearts, you could order them, but their website was really bad, and she finally figures out how to order them, and it was such a complicated procedure that she starts offering for a fee to order them for other people too. Well, then she makes enough money doing that after 2 Valentine's Days that she decides to buy her own candy heart maker.
Wow.
And she buys it, and she starts doing orders for those herself, and she paid for it in a year. In 1 year, 1 Valentine's Day season of candy hearts, she paid for that, and now her side hustle is 6 figures.
Oh my goodness.
And that's not, they will say that's not prescriptive. You can't expect that or whatever, but they take, there's a guy who just made a website where he talked about the ins and outs of fish tanks. What were good, this guy's a contractor in London, and he's like a builder, and but he had a lot of fish tanks, and he would just rate all the fish tanks, and then he made like Amazon pass-through on his site where you'd be like, if you like this fish tank or this fits your needs, you can just click right there, and it'll be directly to the Amazon order page, and he gets a cut of that. And it's like one of the number one fish tank. It's the number one fish tank website in the world. And this guy randomly started. It was a side hustle. Wow. And the point of the podcast, their short little 5 to 7 minute podcast, is not like, hey, do this and you can be rich like them. It's more like, hey, what can you learn about what you do, and how you might be able to use the same principles. It's just very informative, and it's also kind of encouraging.
Yeah. I'll jump in on you.
Yeah, please. I'm tired of talking.
I was tired of listening to you, so just kidding.
Get in line.
So one podcast that people might be familiar with is The Briefing by Al Mohler, who's the president of Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. I enjoy The Briefing. It's just a biblical worldview and perspective of current events, basically. What we don't watch the news that consistently, and we don't have well, we do have cable now. We've kind of gone back and forth, and so that just kept us from keeping up with the news. And so I've found that it's just nice to listen to the briefing for 20 minutes, and you hear about some current events, but you're getting it, through a Christian perspective. So I've just found that very helpful. Again, I do a time and a half, and so you can listen to that quickly and be aware of just what's going on in the culture around you. Another one is Seeing and Believing by Christ and Pop Culture. Christ and Pop Culture has several podcasts, maybe 4 or 5 different ones. I think the 25 is another one I listen to by them. But Seeing and Believing is dealing with television and movies, basically, and helping you think through it, again, from a biblical perspective.
That's right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. But these guys are extremely sharp. I think it's Wade Bearden and Kevin McLenithan, I think are their names. 2 guys. And I mean, they even had one where they interviewed Oliver Stone on one of their podcasts, which was pretty phenomenal that they landed that guy on their podcast. But on the 25, which is also an interesting one that Christ and Pop Culture does, they compile a top 25 list of cultural artifacts for every year. And they say anything from movies to memes and anything in between. And so 4 people are on the show. There's a host, and then 3 people bring an artifact, and they say why it should be on the 25 list. They make a case for it, and then they all debate which one should stay on the list. And so at the end of the show, they nominate one to the top 25. But then they're constantly bringing people on throughout the year. And so even if it makes it on the list in one show, they might end up voting it off and all that, and then they compile that list. So that's very, very interesting. I enjoy those.
That's cool.
Mike Rose, The Way I Heard It. It's basically like Paul Harvey's old. That's the rest of the story. Is interesting and always very brief. I mean, less than 10 minutes.
Paul Harvey would have killed it at podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely.
He did great, but
yeah,
anyway, he would have killed it.
Yeah. Youth Culture Matters is one that I think any youth worker needs to be listening to. I mean, Walt Mueller, that's by Center for Parent Youth Understanding, cpyu.org. Walt Mueller is a youth culture expert and has been doing this for decades. But he and Jason Sochanek host this show. And it is a bit longer of a podcast. Some people complain about that. It's about an hour, 15.
You're going on a road trip, though.
There you go. But and oftentimes I just break it up over a few days.
I do that all the time with podcasts.
Yeah, so it's a very helpful one. Another one is Ask Pastor John by Desiring God, where people just ask questions of John Piper, and it's very interesting. And then the last one I'll mention is Signposts by Russell Moore. I just really appreciate Russell Moore's perspective on the culture. He's very thoughtful, and anyway, so that's another one that I listen to. Do you have any others to add, Kurt?
Well, I couldn't help but mention that we both went to RTS for seminary, and through iTunes, which is basically sort of like a podcast, they have their iTunes. You can listen to if you're thinking about going to seminary, or you just want to audit some seminary classes or whatever. There's a lot to be found there. So
absolutely,
felt like we might ought to mention them too.
Yeah, so that's a good thing, good shout out there for sure. Good stuff, Kurt. Thanks, man.
All right, well, I'll see you in a few minutes.